Hi, my name is Andrea Buckley, and I'm a licensed mental health therapist in the state of Michigan. And welcome to the Connection Diaries. I am so happy that you are here. We are in episode number 4 of my Q&A series, where I've been asking questions, or really answering questions for you all, and asking you all to ask me questions all throughout the month of November. And so I'm really excited to go ahead and close out this series. That doesn't mean I'm not going to answer any more questions. It just means that I will be changing the topic of the series as we go into the month of December. So if you celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. If this is just a day off for you, I hope that you're taking some time to rest and spend some time either with yourself, with your community, with your family. And if you're working today, I hope that that is going well as well. And I hope that you are tuning in because you're looking for some inspiration, because I really feel like the topic of today's video is going to be all things that. We're going to talk about what to do when you don't feel motivated, what to do when you're struggling to find contentment. And we're just going to talk about some practical tips and tools that you can put in your toolkit as you think about your healing journey. And so these topics came from a combination of very similar questions that I received, and so I'm just going to talk from my heart and share some things with you all. And I hope that if you're experiencing a hard time, or if you're experiencing a sore spot as it relates to your healing journey right now, or if you're just preparing to really weather through these winter months and you're sad about the sun not being here, I really hope that some of the things that are shared in today's video really connect with you. So grab a piece of paper, grab a pencil, open your heart, open your mind. And as always, at the end of this video, in the caption, you will find some journaling prompts so that you can begin to dive deeper on some of the topics that we're going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and jump in. Are you ready? All right. So I have some notes here. And the first question I want to answer is how to stay motivated when you're not seeing the results of healing. And I put the results in quotation marks because I really feel that a lot of times we see healing as a destination versus this journey, this continuous process, this lifelong thing, this thing that does not cease until I cease to exist. And so there's no destination, but I get what this question means, right? Like maybe I want to learn how to set boundaries a little bit better, right? And I find myself consistently struggling to set boundaries, and I'm not seeing the results I want to see. I want to see myself successfully set boundaries, maybe on a more consistent basis, right? And so, how do I stay motivated when I'm not seeing those results? So, I want to take a step back and talk about what motivation is and what it is not, or what I don't want to convey. And so, what I mean by that is, when I think about motivation, sometimes we're not motivated to do things because they're just not for us. They're not aligned with our values. There aren't things that turn us on, that excite us. And so I'll never try to encourage you to increase your motivation to do things that are not aligned with your best interests, that do not further you moving closer to who you are authentically. That is not me. That could be another platform, but you will never hear me say anything along those lines. And so before we even get into this question, I want you to ask yourself, are the results that you are looking for, are they authentic? Are they aligned with your values, and are they for your best interests? And if the answer to those questions are yes, then I want you to think about motivation as something that is very normal to kind of come and go, if that makes sense. When I think about being my most motivated self, I think about being the version of myself that is smiley, that is silly, that, can crack a good joke, that feels energetic, that feels like she's experiencing emotions that are very comfortable. So when I go out into the world, I'm presenting this version of myself. And when I feel my least motivated self, I feel a little bit like depressed or sad or anxious or insecure, or just like not strong, vulnerable, right? In those moments, I might not feel as motivated to do the things that I say I want to do. And so, because it is inevitable that I will experience sadness, anxiety, maybe insecurity, things of that nature, what I want to do instead is normalize that I will not always feel motivated to do the things that I want to do, that I will sometimes have to act even in the midst of my discomfort, even in the midst of my vulnerability, even in the midst of my imperfection, and normalize that that is okay. That sometimes consistency is better than not showing up at all. sometimes doing a little bit of something is better than not doing nothing at all. And so when I make a promise to myself, because that's what I really want to talk about, how do I stay motivated to do the things that I've promised to myself that I would do? How do I show up even when I don't feel like it? Because I'm worthy of keeping that commitment to myself. So when I think about motivation, I want you to think about what have I promised myself that I would do, and how do I consistently not show up for myself? And when I realize that, how do I give myself permission to ask myself for forgiveness and say, hey, no, Drea, I'm going to consistently show up for you. I'm going to do this even when I don't feel like it because you're worth it. And I want to keep this promise to you so I can rebuild this trust. How do I allow that why to be bigger than my emotional discomfort, to be bigger than maybe how my energy levels might fluctuate? How do I do that? I do that by sometimes adjusting my expectations. So, say, for example, I keep a promise to myself to work out every day. Maybe a normal workout is 40 minutes, but this time it's going to be 20. But I still showed up, I still moved my body, I still got my heart rate up. And that's really the goal, the main objective. And so when you find yourself not feeling motivated, what you want to do is go back to your why. Like, why am I even doing this? Am I doing this because it's authentic to me, because it's something that I want? Or am I doing this because it's something that I think I should want or somebody else wants for me? If it's something that you want, you're in the right boat. So the second thing you're going to think about is how can I break this down and set a realistic expectation based off where I am that day? So again, at my most ideal self, my most energized self, I don't even like the word ideal, but my most energized self, maybe I can give 40-minute commitment to this thing. But when I'm feeling maybe a little bit not, 100%, maybe I can give 20. But I'm still keeping that promise to myself, which is to show up every day. So that's how I would answer that question. How to stay motivated when you're not seeing the results of healing. Oh, one other thing I would add is write down your results, write down the things that you have been doing, write down your wins. Sometimes you have to intentionally draw your mind's attention to those things. So sit down, it's kind of like a gratitude list, but for yourself, and sit down and write down, say, oh, I did set that boundary. Maybe I didn't do it on Monday, but I did it on Tuesday. I did show up, for myself and move my body. Maybe it was just going for a walk. Maybe it wasn't doing like a hour hit workout in the gym, but that's okay. And maybe I want to build up to a point where, I'm doing an hour workout every day. If that's a unique goal that's authentic to you, not something that you think you should do because you saw it on TikTok or something like that. Like, I want it to be something that you feel authentically called to. If it's a goal you feel called to, then it's a promise you want to honor for yourself, if that makes sense. But you get to adjust and be flexible as you show up in different versions of yourself each day. You have to meet yourself where you are in order to be consistent in any goal, or you just be like, I don't want to do this. If that makes sense, because I only am allowing myself to do this if I am able to show up at 100%. But if I normalize that sometimes I'll be at 20, 30, 40, 50, then I will adjust my expectation based on that, and I will still be able to be consistent. So I'll say that one for that. The next question is about how do you remain content when all you can see is what needs to be changed? This is a big one. When you're healing, when you're trying to grow, sometimes it's really difficult not to focus on your weaknesses or your areas of growth. And that can be very discouraging because if I see myself as this never ending self improvement project, I'm always looking at myself through a lens of what can be fixed versus what can be loved. And to me, that's what's most important. Even as I look at myself, I'm looking at myself in the camera right now. Like, I want to look at myself and say, like, how can I love Drea better today? Now, how can I fix Drea? How can I control Drea? How can I love her better in this moment? And in some moments, that means I need to get out of bed and I need to take care of what I need to do, for the day. And some moments that might be, I need a little bit extra rest and I need to sleep in a little bit today, depending on whatever I'm supposed to be doing in my commitment level that day, right? So instead of looking at myself through a lens of how can I fix myself, if you ask yourself every day, how can I love myself, like for real, then I think you will be able to see the things that you want to change in your life begin to shift naturally because your perspective on those things will shift. So, for example, if I see myself, let's stick with the boundaries thing since that's coming up today. If I see myself as like, man, I just suck at setting boundaries, like I put everybody else before myself, right? and I just look at myself through that lens, it kind of keeps me a little bit stuck, it kind of puts me in a place of shame. But if I look at it through, man, like, how can I love Drea better in this moment? Like, I keep putting Drea's needs to the side. I keep telling her I would do one thing and I do the other. Like, how can I love her better in this moment? You see how the tone of that is a little bit different? I know my actual tone changed, but also the message tone changed as well. It's not about how can I fix something that's broken. It's more so how can I love something and give it what it needs, meaning me, myself. So that's how I would answer that question. Contentment, I feel the most content when I feel the most loved. And yeah, I feel the least content when I feel the most broken. So how can you shift the lens in which you view yourself? I would say that would be something that would really help with contentment. Alongside, one of the most popular, tips you'll hear when people ask that question is gratitude. How can I write a gratitude list? How can I think about my strengths? But to me, I think even deeper than that, I want to be able to love myself even in the midst of those moments that are not strengths, even in the midst of the moments where I'm like, I need to grow a little bit more in this area. That is what is going to reach more consistent and long-term success. Okay. So I love these questions. Thank y'all so much. So yeah, we talked about how to stay motivated. We talked about how to remain content. And now I want to talk about, someone asked, what are some healing tools that I can use in my everyday life? And this is really helpful because, especially for folks who are experiencing hard times right now, you want to know, like, what can I do practically every day to show up for myself in these moments, right? And so I wrote down a couple of things. And one thing I'm thinking about, you'll always hear me talk about, is journaling. That's why every video I create, there are journaling prompts that are in the caption of the video, because I really believe that my job isn't to just like talk at people, is to get people to think deeper and to apply some of the things that I talk about to their own lives and their own unique situations. And so the journaling prompts help with that. I promise every single video, even if you hear a video and you're like, I feel like that doesn't really apply, I promise you it applies if you do the journaling prompts. And journaling is a cool tool because it is a space where you can reassure yourself. It's a space where you can listen to yourself. And it's a space where you can confront yourself. Because life is so, like, we always are moving so fast, it's very easy not to listen to your own voice or to ignore the sound of your own voice. So you ignore that part of you that's like, this doesn't feel right, or this doesn't resonate with me, or this relationship doesn't make me happy, things of that nature, or it doesn't meet my needs. I would say that was probably better language. But when you write something down, or even doing a video diary, because not everybody I work with likes to do journaling, which is completely okay. But what about a video diary or a voice note? When you say something out loud or when you write it down, you kind of have to confront it. You kind of have to see it. And sometimes you need prompts, which is what I do, to cause you to dive a little bit deeper. So the first thing you do when you journal, you're just kind of like throwing up on paper. You're just writing whatever comes up and put it on your paper. It's how you listen to yourself. It's how you sit with what is going on internally. But then you want to reassure yourself. What does Drea need to hear in this moment after she just listened to herself, right? And you want to confront yourself. You want to be able to pinpoint parts of your thought process that are rooted in shame, maybe rooted in fear, rooted in anxiety, rooted in insecurity, rooted in just all of your own stuff, right? And that comes through self-awareness, and that comes through, sometimes going through therapy and having someone help you point out patterns that maybe you don't see, but then once you see it, it's hard to unsee it. And so confrontation is a really important part of journaling, and reassuring yourself is a really important part of journaling. The second tool, oh, it's so funny. The second tool I want to talk about is crying, like the act of crying. Crying is emotional release. And I cry a lot. And it's not always convenient. I promise you, it's not. But when you get done, a lot of times you will feel better because you've released so much tension. As long as you're not like shaming yourself and judging yourself and beating yourself up for just the act of crying. Right now I've cried and now I have to sit with the aftermath of that. But when you allow yourself to just release and to just feel, maybe you're not a crier, maybe you haven't had a good cry in a while, but how do you experience emotional release? Whatever that looks like for you, Doing that on a more frequent basis will be really, really helpful for your healing journey. You may hear therapists say things like, you got to feel your feelings, or like sit with it, or allow it to pass through your body. What does that look like for you? For me, that looks like crying. Sometimes it looks like just sitting in it, like literally journaling about the feeling, holding the feeling. It almost reminds me of like being with like a little baby and like consoling it a little bit, not rushing past it, you know? And so I would add that to your toolkit, whether it be crying, whether it be going for a walk, whether it be just sitting some way that you're sitting with the emotion and it's moving through your body. Okay. The third tool I want to talk about is the tool of community. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. Joy Inspires is a practice that centers community healing alongside individual care. The reason for this is because I work with a lot of people one-on-one, great people. I love my clients, the bestest people ever. But a lot of times what happens is after they leave the therapy room, they might not have a space where they feel like they can continue to do this work. They might even be in relationships, they might have friends, they might have family, but do you have a space where you can be seen, where you can be heard, where you can be your authentic self, where you can be the versions of yourself that you've been so used to hiding from other people, masking, you know? Like we need more spaces where people can be real, where people can be vulnerable, where people can be authentic. That in of itself is healing. I would say I read a statistic that 1 in 2 adults, have experienced loneliness regularly. They're experiencing loneliness regularly. And not only that, 60% of folks who experience loneliness are at a higher risk for premature death, which is wild. And so when I talk about community, I'm not talking about it just for the sake of like, let's just have a social fun time. I'm an introvert. I can stay at home. I promise you I can. But when I talk about community, I'm talking about the type of community that improves health outcomes, the type of community that helps you really feel seen and heard, that honors like our human desire for intimacy. Like we need that kind of connection, you know? And so that is a tool that cannot be taken out the toolbox. I don't care if you have social anxiety, if you're an introvert, if you're like, I just love my alone time, like all of that can be true. And we need each other. That's just also true. So community and therapy is my message, that go to therapy, learn how to heal your relationship with yourself, learn how to be who you are authentically, learn how to grow and discover who you are and grow in self-awareness. And then when you go out and find community, you want to find community that honors that version of you, because that furthers the healing. And a lot of times what happens is people's communities and relationships are what hinder healing at times, because maybe I'm in a relationship where I can't set boundaries, or where I can't be myself, or maybe I'm with a friend where I have to mask all the time. It kind of is counterproductive, right? Because I'm trying to be myself, I'm trying to be authentic, I'm trying to put myself out there, I'm trying to set boundaries, I'm trying to do all these things. But when I go back to my community, whatever that may look like for me, feeling like I can't do that, it kind of puts me in a box, and it kind of stunts my growth versus being in a space that is where I feel like I can be expansive, and I feel like I can be seen and heard and loved. And it, really mirrors the type of love that I have internally, that I'm trying to cultivate internally when I'm doing my one-on-one work. So I'll say that. And the last thing I'll talk about, and I kind of alluded to this in my first video of November, is grief. Grief to me is one of the biggest healing tools, grief alongside gratitude. You hear people talk about gratitude a lot, but I want to talk about grief because I think life is about grief and gratitude. I think they're the most, for me at least, the most salient experiences, right? Like we're always going through changes. We're always grieving what was and looking towards what will be, and hopefully having gratitude for what is. And so when I think about grief, our ability to grieve is probably going to be the biggest like catalyst in our healing journey, if that makes sense. And I want to talk about that in terms of relationships. For example, when I think about relationships, I a lot of times we hold on to things because we don't want to grieve them. That could be romantic, platonic, business, family. But if I give myself space to say, like, I'm probably going to be grieving something every day as I heal and as I grow, then it gives me space to let go of things and open myself up to the new. And to me, I found that has been the biggest barrier for folks, is not wanting to sit in the grief, to sit in the disappointment, to go through the grieving process, or maybe they live lives where life is so busy, so hectic that I don't have time to grieve, or I feel like I don't have time to grieve. And that gets in the way because when I don't give myself space to grieve, I never open myself up to the possibility of like a new reality, right? The possibility that I have needs that are now going unmet. The possibility that, I have this ability for connection and love that is not being fulfilled. So many layers. So I'm going to talk about grief like in another video because that's a complex concept. But I would say the ability to grieve, to sit with your grief, is a tool that I would put in your toolkit. And one-on-one therapy helps with that. Grief groups help with that. Journaling helps with that. So everything kind of feeds into one another. But I just want you to take away these points of journaling, crying / emotional release, community and therapy, and then grief and gratitude. Those are all tools that I would sit with on a weekly or daily basis in order to further my healing journey. So thank y'all for tuning in. I'm super excited to just continue this channel to see where this journey leads. Thank you for just witnessing me and being present. As always, please, please, please like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend. And I'm so excited to jump into our new series for December. So stay on the lookout for that. You will see weekly videos here every Thursday at noon. So thank you for being here. Always remember that you are loved, that you are enough, and stay inspired.